Alright everybody, welcome to the draft recap video. We had a very successful draft on Saturday night. It was a great time. Thanks everybody for coming. And yeah, I figured we could go team by team and give everybody a draft grade. And that we could also look at maybe a best pick and a worst pick for each team. And yeah, just look at the rosters before the season actually gets underway in a couple weeks and see what teams look to be the strongest or the weakest and where teams might need a little help. So, alright, let's get to it. Alright, first up with the first pick, we have Pat Jordan and Brown to the Crown. And he had a rough draft, we'll say, with the second half of his draft maybe being the worst ever seen in the history of fantasy football. It was that bad. And we'll give the overall draft grade of a D-. So we start out harsh with our draft grades. And on top of that, on Sunday, received a little NFL mobile alert on my phone about Jordy Nelson. That is just brutal. Pat, who arguably had the worst draft of the night, the very next day, his keeper Jordy out for the year. Oh, just kicking Pat when he's down. That's rough. That's rough. But let's get to some good news for Pat. Let's talk about his best pick. And for his best pick, we'll go with the obvious. We'll go with a pick he did not mess up. Number 1 overall, Eddie Lacy. Well done, Pat. Eddie Lacy is pretty amazing. He's even available in a keeper league. And to be able to snag him at number 1, well done. But after that first pick, it kind of went downhill for Pat. And for his worst pick of the night, I had a lot of options here. I had a lot to choose from. We got an 8th round defense in the Seahawks. An 8th round is just absurd for a defense. We have a 4th round Julius Thomas. Julius Thomas, who is ranked behind Zach Ertz on ESPN. And Zach Ertz went 8 rounds later. My goodness. We have Wes Welker, who's not even playing football right now, who's not even on a team. Maybe you could pick him up off waivers, Pat, if someone if he decides to play football this year. Don't need to draft him. And then we have our worst pick of the night for Pat. We'll say Mr. Ray Rice. That maybe pulled the trigger a little early on that one. Ray Rice, would have been a good pick in say 2010. But now Ray Rice more than likely won't even play. He is only owned in 6% of fantasy football leagues. Yet, for some reason, Pat pulled the trigger quite early on Mr. Ray Rice. So, quite a few questionable decisions by Pat. And it looked like a pretty somewhat, we won't say sober, we'll say not hammered Pat. So I don't know what he can blame it on this year. But yeah, it looks like for the second year in a row, Pat's probably finishing last.
Man, you are one pathetic loser. No offense.
Alright, next up we have, with the second pick, Team Domo and Stephen Cole. And his draft was a little hard to grade because he had a lot of bold choices where you could tell Cole had some sleepers and he stuck to them. Maybe reached for him a little bit early, but hey, he wanted to get his guys. We had a 2nd overall Julio Jones. That was bold. We had a 2nd round Frank Gore. And also a 4th round Eli Manning. A little early for these guys, but still trendy picks. So we'll give an overall draft grade of a B-. Now, his best pick, we'll go with the 5th round. He found a possible PPR monster in C.J. Spiller. Now, C.J. Spiller's been a bust for like 5 years in a row, but this could be the year. Watch out. He's got a new home with the Saints, and so if Sean Payton gets him involved in that passing game, he could rack up some big points. With the worst pick, it was I think Pat made him a little nervous by drafting a defense so early. In the 9th round, Cole went with the Houston Texans defense. And again, very early, guys. Y'all can wait on those defenses. The rest of us, very sensible. No one else picked a defense even before the 12th round. But Pat and Cole both jumped on them very quickly. So yeah, a little early. We'll say that was the worst pick of the night, but for Cole, but pretty solid draft. Overall, B- grade. All right, next up, picking at number 3 is Earth So Good, Mike Melson, who had a very solid draft, especially in the first few rounds where, it all broke his way. He had somehow Jamal Charles just fall into his lap at number 3. And then in the 2nd round, he got Peyton Manning after a lot of other quarterbacks were off the board. He gets one of the best. Great picks at the top. So, an overall draft grade of an A-. Well done. Our best pick of the night, we'll see, because this is a bit of a risky pick, but I like it. We'll go with Melvin Gordon. So, got him in the 3rd round. Melvin Gordon was just insane in college, and we'll see if that translates to the NFL. If it does at all, he's a steal. He's got the chance to prove himself in San Diego. We'll see how he does, but he could be a beast. Our worst pick of the night is another player who was also insane in college, Amari Cooper. But the only problem with him, unlike Gordon, is he could be a little limited because he's on the Raiders.
We've got to be the dumbest team in America in terms of playing the game.
So who knows, maybe Amari Cooper can overcome it. But the Raiders have just been a black hole for talent for the past decade. But all in all, a very good draft and a talented team this year for Earth So Good. Watch out. All right, next up, number 4 on the list, we have Shane with We Are Garbage. Now, I thought he might change the team name. That's a bit of a pessimistic outlook to start the year. No games have been played yet. Maybe you're not garbage. But, yeah, keeping the name. And his draft was interesting because Shane was one of the ones who did the double wide receiver keeper strategy. And that sometimes is tough because running backs are usually the most scarce and the cornerstone of a fantasy team. And Shane's first 2 draft picks on Saturday, quarterback. So his strategy, I guess, with running back was to kind of pick 6 rando, middling running backs and hope that a couple work out. It's a risky strategy, trusting your backfield to the Shane Vereen and Chris Ivorys of the world. But maybe it'll work out. But because of that, we'll give a draft grade of a C. So his best pick of the night kind of turned out to be luck because Saturday night I wouldn't have called it the best pick for Shane, and then Sunday night I would. And that's because it's Davante Adams of the Packers, who suddenly, with Jordy going down in a heap, Davante Adams is suddenly the number 2 receiver on an Aaron Rodgers team. That could wind up being pretty lucrative. So it turned out to be a great pick. Well done. Now the worst pick for Shane turned out to be Tyler Eifert. Because I looked him up. Shane drafted Tyler Eifert in the 9th round. And I remember thinking, I don't really know much about Tyler Eifert. He wasn't even really on my radar. I didn't even really think of him at tight end. And so I go to look at the ESPN projections. And he is the 21st ranked tight end. Yikes. And Shane picked him as the 7th tight end. So he might have been able to get him off of waivers. He might have been able to get him like second to last round of the draft. Who knows? but went a little early on Mr. Eifert. So maybe that was his guy going into the draft and he really wanted him and pulled the trigger, but might have been a little bit of a reach. At number 5, we have America's Fantasy Team with Stephen Griffith. And I like the wide receivers on his team with Des Bryant and Julian Edelman. He's got Carlos Hyde and LaShawn McCoy at running back. Pretty good. But where this team might be hurting is at quarterback. Because we got a tandem of Ryan Tannehill, Marcus Mariota, and Blake Bortles. Ooh. So those are some young, unproven quarterbacks on some trash teams. So we'll see. That might hurt him a little bit. So because of that, overall draft grade of a C-, but we'll see. His best pick of the night, I have to go with Eddie Royal. His last pick of the night, 17th rounder. So I think there might be some value there. Because for the Bears, their wide receiver of Kevin White, their first round pick this year, he's injured. Marcus Wilson, he's injured. All of a sudden, Eddie Royal is the only clear, really, number 2 behind Alshon Jeffrey. So Eddie Royal is going to be getting some looks because the Bears are going to be losing all the time. So they'll be throwing all the time. So a few of Jay Cutler's heaves might be caught by Eddie Royal. We'll see what happens. With the worst pick of the night, I'm actually going to go with his first pick. So we're gonna mirror. I'll say LaShawn McCoy. And it's not just because I'm bitter, because he angrily left the Eagles and called my boy Chip Kelly a racist and burned those bridges. But really it's because McCoy was his first round pick and McCoy is injured. He should be able to start the year and play the first game, but that's a little risky with your first overall pick already going in questionable. So you still had Demaryius Thomas, Andrew Luck, Matt Forte on the board. So that might have been ill-advised. We'll see. All right, the number 6 pick belonged to Drew Melson, one fell swoop. And he had a good draft, solid running backs and solid wide receivers and a good tight end. But like a couple other teams we mentioned, QB could hurt him a little bit with his trio of Colin Kaepernick, RG3, and Nick Foles. There seemed to be a little QB shortage. Maybe someone was hoarding stud quarterbacks all draft. Send me your trade offers. But all in all, pretty good draft. An overall draft grade of a B+. So with his best pick, I'm going to go Greg Olsen. He finished last year as the number 3 tight end, somewhat surprisingly. And so he's right near the top. And he plays on a team that just lost Kelvin Benjamin, its number 1 wide receiver. So the Panthers, they got to throw to somebody. And it really seems like Greg Olsen is their only real person who can catch the ball. So it feels like Gregory's going to have a ton of catches and be right at the top with Gronk and Jimmy Graham, but at a little bit better value. So nice pick with Greg Olsen. Now his worst pick, I gotta go with RG3. He is not a good number 2 quarterback to have on your team. He spends more time making commercials than making plays.
With an elite quarterback like Robert Griffin III, it all comes down to decisions. Pass or run, jump or spin, spinach or tomatoes.
What? And no red onions?
Calling him a leech might be a little bit generous, Subway. But RG3, he's made of glass. He's going to get injured. He might play 3 games this year. Drew's probably going to have to look elsewhere for some quarterback help. Number 7, we got Super Mario Brothers, John Fitzsimmons. And very solid all-around team. No holes looking at his roster, really. He's got good starters, good backups. Each position's pretty well covered. So an overall draft grade of a B+. Very nice draft. So his best pick is a lot like Devonta Adams. I'm giving a bump to Randall Cobb, his 2nd round pick. Randall Cobb was already going to be good, but now just imagine how many passes he's going to get, my goodness. And being a PPR league, Rodgers just going to be throwing Cobb all day. I think he's going to get maybe 500 catches. Who knows? So Randall Cobb's a good pick. With his worst pick, though, I'm going to go with Jameis Winston, old famous Jameis, as an 11th round pick. First of all, he's a rookie quarterback, and rookie quarterbacks usually don't pan out too well. But secondly, he's an a-hole, and I just wouldn't want him on my team.
Cannot play with him. Cannot win with him. Cannot coach with him. Can't do it.
The real question is, how many arrests for Jameis Winston this year? Only time will tell. At number 8, we got Gimme the Loot Reborn. And for his team, looks really good at quarterback with Luck. Jimmy Graham at tight end. You got A.J. Green and Alshon Jeffrey, a wide receiver. A little thin at running back, but he's got C.J. Anderson there. Overall, got a lot of studs on this team, and so I'm going to give it an A- draft grade because there's some quality on this team. So with his best pick, I'm going to go with Phillip Rivers. He got him in the 5th round, and he was the 12th quarterback off the board. But Phillip Rivers is just as consistent as can be, year in, year out. Solid production, you know what you're getting. A solid quarterback you can count on as a mid-round pick. And he got him after guys like Ryan Tannehill, Eli Manning, Tony Romo. All those guys who, who knows from year to year. I like Phillip Rivers. Solid. With the worst pick, I'm going to go with Jeremy Maclin in the 4th round. Now, this is the second former Eagle popping up on my worst pick list. So I'm sorry, former Eagles. I love Jeremy Maclin, and he had great stats last year. But he's going from a Chip Kelly offense to old Big Bear Andy Reid's offense. And they're one of the most conservative teams in the NFL. So Jeremy Maclin probably isn't going to get too many touchdown catches. Probably going to be not quite worth a 4th round pick. At number 9, Marshawn Lynchpin, Ben Weeks. Sorry we had to do it to you, Ben, but you got auto-drafted.
It's really unfair. It's really unfair.
Now, Ben, you can't complain. No complaining. You knew about this draft for like a month, and somehow still A, couldn't even make it, and B, couldn't even give us a rankings list to pick for you, so we just had to pick ourselves.
And if you guys do that, man, it's unfair.
Sorry, Ben, that's on you. And really, it's just a lose-lose for all of us, because Ben either has a terrible lost year and complains about a team he didn't even pick, or he somehow wins with a roster of randos that he had nothing to do with, and screws the rest of us. So, it's all bad. So, of course, with an auto draft and being the absolute worst, a draft grade of an F-. There's no way around it. That is well deserved. So for the best pick of the draft, we gotta go with none. Ben didn't make any picks, so there's no best pick. Maybe Matthew Berry and Eric Karabell made some picks. Some ESPN experts weighed in on your team, but Ben didn't do jack. So for his worst pick, but this is really a decision he made. His worst pick is his keepers. Because it really made no sense. By the time it got to Ben's fake auto draft in the 3rd round, you had 20 keepers already gone, and you had 28 picks already made. So, at this point, there are 48 players off the board, and Ben has no quarterbacks, no wide receivers, no tight end. Pat would like to point out no defense. And so, naturally, Ben's team is 2 studs at running back and then nothing else. So, that really can't be blamed on auto draft. That was just a bad decision by Ben Weeks because there wasn't really a ton of value in those keepers. I still am blown away that he didn't keep a 5th round Eddie Lacy. That's just mind-boggling. So, you better pray Lynch and Peterson can carry your team because you bet the farm on them. So this is who you're putting all your faith in right here.
Sean, what does it feel like to be in beast mode?
You don't feel in beast mode. It feels you.
Finally, at the number 10 spot, we got yours truly, Fly Hard. Now, I might sound biased, and yes, I'm grading teams based on what I think right after the draft, so it'd be weird if I didn't get a high grade. But my team looks pretty good.
This team is going to the playoffs. Okay?
We'll give an overall draft grade of an A-. It's a pretty solid squad, especially at quarterback with Russell Wilson and Drew Brees and Tom Terrific just waiting on the bench just for a rainy day. Got Le'Veon Bell and Matt Forte at running back, Calvin Johnson and Brandon Cooks at wide receiver. Woo, it's a pretty stacked team. So, for the best pick, I actually am going to go with Tom Brady, Tom Terrific. That was some good value as the 13th quarterback off the board. And it's really just good value, I guess, for me because he is suspended. I have the all-suspended team with Le'Veon Bell and Tom Brady, so maybe I will lose a couple early on in the season. But after suspension, I think Tom Brady's just going to, give a big middle finger to Roger Goodell and just throw 5 touchdowns a game. And from what I've been seeing on the ESPN, Tom Brady's suspension might even be reduced, so he could be a steal in the 5th round. Now, the worst pick for me followed shortly after, Ameer Abdullah in the 6th round. And it hurts me to say because Abdullah was my big sleeper and a guy I wanted going into the draft. Thought he could be big in a PPR league. He's a rookie who was crazy good in college and hopefully playing for the Lions, that's a pretty high scoring offense. But it comes to the 6th round and I didn't have a pick in the 7th or 8th round and I knew he wasn't going to last, 30 more picks. So I went for it. And it was a bit early for Ameer Abdullah in the 6th round. So here is everybody's final draft grade. We have a lot of high marks, so it should be a really competitive year with a lot of good squads. Alright, and just to wrap up, I know it's been a long video, so appreciate you for sticking with me. I hope you enjoyed it. But just to wrap up, first I want to give a big shout out to Pat and also Kat for being wonderful draft hosts. It was a great time and much appreciated. Second, I have some bad news about the draft board. Sadly, it did say 2014 in the description of the item, and they won't give me a refund. So why they would sell a draft board that's a year old, I have no idea. Probably for cases just like this where a big dummy will buy it without reading closely and be stuck with it. That's on commish. That's my bad. But luckily, we made it work. That brings me to a question I had. I thought this might be kind of a fun idea. That maybe whoever finishes in last place should be in charge of buying/bringing the draft board the following year. I thought that might be a little fun twist and make the bottom of the standings a little bit more exciting. You'll be playing for something. So anyway, just an idea. We can vote on it or something. And then third, we have this beautiful, beautiful trophy. Shout out to Griff. Thank you very much for making that and bringing that for the draft. That was awesome. And I'm so excited that we'll be playing for that trophy. And I was thinking that we should have a nameplate of the trophy, whatever we want to call it. And then around the base, we can have the winner from each season. So we need a name for the trophy. And that's something that we can vote on. So brainstorm some trophy names. I've thought of 3. So I'll share them now. If they get some high votes, if people like them, we could go with one of those names. If not, feel free to bring some suggestions. But my first name comes from what I think is the coolest trophy in all of sports. And so one option would be to call it the Manly Cup. Another trophy that's pretty awesome is the Heisman Trophy. And this is a football trophy, so that works well here too. But rather than the Heisman Trophy, we got the Wiseman Trophy. And finally, sadly this name doesn't really have a pun. It's just based on those little pewter cups that you see in Charlottesville a lot, named after our boy TJ. We could call it the Jefferson Cup. So those are some options I thought of. Feel free to share what you like, what you don't like, and we can figure that out. Alright, everybody. Thanks for watching. Looking forward to the season getting underway in just a couple weeks. Can't wait.